for 5 minutes. I will tell you, friends, I was here in 2008 and I saw how we treated the big banks. The truth is this: they were overpaid in this sense. There were banks that said, we don't want that money. We don't want it to appear as though we need the money. But we imposed upon them billions of dollars. They were overpaid. But when it comes to the consumer gets shortchanged. The consumer has to jump through all kinds of hoops to try to get what Congress intended consumers to receive. So I'm just appalled, to be quite frank with you, at the fact that the consumer always seems to find himself or herself groveling to a certain extent to get something that these big banks get as a matter of course. I'm not opposed to big banks. I just want everybody to be treated fairly. This program, in my opinion, has no consequences. If the servicers misbehaved, there are no consequences. It seems to me that we in the future will have to find a way to impose some consequences. My constituents who have actually received this notice that is according them 3 months of forbearance when they're entitled to 180 days, they now have to hire a lawyer if they want to pursue this. They can't get it done simply because they have made a fair and just request. They will have to go through some other extenuating circumstances. I would like to note that this would be submitted into the record without objection. I would also call to your attention this. It always seems that people of color are having to account for themselves. We have to prove that people of color are being discriminated against. And this is not just as it relates to the financial services industry, it's across the board. People of color always seem to be at the bottom. At some point, we have to have the system adjusted such that people of color will get the same treatment as other persons in this society. I think that what happened to George Floyd is exposing the underbelly of what's happening to people of color, and other people are starting to realize that it will take more than our hues and cries to get this done. It's my belief that there is systemic discrimination. Let me go to you, Mr. Williams, if I may please, sir. Do you agree that there is systemic discrimination taking place in lending?
I do. I totally agree. I see it often. We have some resolutions. I mean, there needs to be no better time like now that we need to address the Black home ownership program.
Let me do this. Time is of the essence. Ms. Griffin, do you agree that there is systemic discrimination in lending?
Yes, there is.
And let me go next to Ms. Cohen. Do you agree that there's systemic discrimination in lending?
Yes, I agree. The CFPB found that for people with the same credit scores, Black borrowers were rejected for mortgages at higher rates.
And Mr. DeMarco, do you agree?
I agree that we have certainly had a history of this, and there seems to still be areas where it's an issue. Yes, sir.
Well, if you agree that there is this systemic discrimination, I have proposed that we have a Department of Reconciliation with the responsibility of dealing with racism and invidious discrimination in this country. And it would deal with financial services. It goes into policing and many other areas. If you agree that we have this problem and we've had it for hundreds of years, isn't it about time that we do something other than what we have been doing? Would you agree, Mr. Williams, that it would be appropriate to have a Department of Reconciliation who has as its responsibility to look out for people who are being discriminated against? And this would include the protected classes. Look out for them, report to the president, a Secretary of Reconciliation. Would you agree that
Yes,
such a position should exist, sir?
Yes, sir. I agree wholeheartedly.
Ms. Cohen, where do you stand, please?
Yes, we think that's important, and we think it's important to change.
Let me move on. My time is of the essence. I'm so sorry, Ms. Cohen. Ms. Griffin, where do you stand, please?
I fully agree, and it needs to be monitored, and there needs to be penalties.
And Mr. DeMarco?
I have no opinion on a position like that, Congressman. I do believe we all have a responsibility to act.
Well, let me do this now that you've said this, Mr. DeMarco. All persons who are in agreement and you think that systemic racism and invidious discrimination as it relates to people, including the classes, should be handled with a department that specializes in this, kindly raise your hand, please. Raise your hand so that we may capture all on screen. Okay, I see everyone's hand saving Mr. DeMarco. Would you do a screenshot of this, please, staff? Thank you. Thank you, friends. You may lower your hands. My time has expired. And I would like to also include for the record a statement from the Mortgage Bankers Association without objection. Without objection is included in the record. Friends, if I may now bring this to closure, I thank all of you for appearing today, especially the witnesses. And thank you for your testimony and for devoting your time and resources to share your expertise with the subcommittee. Your testimony today has helped to advance the important work of this subcommittee and the U.S. Congress. The chair notes that some members may have additional questions for this panel, which they may wish to submit in writing. Without objection, the hearing record will remain open for 5 legislative days for members to submit written questions to these witnesses and to place their responses in the record. Also, without objection, members will have 5 legislative days to submit extraneous materials to the chair for inclusion in the record. I remind members to submit written questions and materials for the record to the email address provided to your staff. This hearing is now adjourned.